The Rock and Roll and Coffee Show is brought to you by Writers and Rockers Coffee Company, keeping the music and memories alive with some damn good coffee. Be sure to pick up your Rock and Roll and Coffee Show coffee only at writersandrockerscoffee.com. And also brought to you by Retroactive, located at Broadway at the Beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, keeping you retro with everything from 70s, 80s, and 90s. ShopRetroactive.com.
It's the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show. Yeah, with Joe.
You in your new book, it's called Turn It Up, My Time Making Hit Records in the Glory Days of Rock Music. I got it right here.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm reading this right now. I haven't got all the way to the end, but
Okay.
I am enjoying it.
Good.
Why did you want to do the book?
Well, probably at the root of it all was that I wanted to explain to people why they should love the music that I love, and the music of the classic rock era, which is over. You know, for me, it was a defined, finite period, but it was, you know, the most glorious creative avalanche of music that I could imagine in that century. Also, I discovered that with an increasing number of podcasts, that a lot of people who did not listen to, we didn't listen to our parents' music very much. Younger kids and middle-aged people grew up with a family who listened to classic rock. And I finally I was cruising the internet once, and I found a very critical review on a blog, and it was a review of me, and it wasn't about my music. It was about me, and I had never met the guy. He was fairly critical, and you know, it's as if it was hearsay, and it was really not at all complimentary. So I contacted the editor of the blog, and I said, "Can I defend myself?" He said, "Sure, we'd love that." So I wrote a defense, and I eviscerated the guy, I think. And the readers loved it, and he said, "Would you write more for us?" So I wrote 18 episodes, which basically, you know, told about my career, how I got into music, how I couldn't avoid getting into music. And that became the kind of the skeleton of the book. And then I would write. I enjoyed writing it so much that I filled it in with more detail, and just kind of slotted those pieces of writing in chronologically. And there was the book. That, you know, I did one podcast that had over 100,000 hits, and that really told me that there was an audience out there, a big audience. Whole families have grown up listening to classic rock, and you know, I saw a teenage girl in the gym with an Iron Maiden T-shirt, and I asked her how she knew about them because she wasn't born. And you know, she said, "Well, my dad," you know, and that's what's happened. And there are people who know and love classic rock from the age of 15 to 80. Well, because it was great. Uh, you know, everything. The evolution of rock music in that time, you know, from Elvis through the Beatles into the 70s and 80s, was astonishing. You know, every artist seemed to have taken something from the artists before him and moved the goalposts a little bit musically. It's just great, especially in contrast to today's music, which which obviously I don't think very much of. And yes, I'm old, and no, I do not seek it out, new music, but I walk into CVS, or I walk into a supermarket and I hear what they're playing, and I just want to leave. I mean, the perfection, the vocals, how many notes can I get into this one measure? And the perfection and the repetition, and it just doesn't, it's not like it was.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say the perfection. Do you think it's too perfect now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they'll take, it's quite easy to hear that they'll take a single snare hit, a snare drum hit, and they'll make it the same. Every single snare drum hit will be that hit.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just sample it and repeat it, and repeat it. All the backing vocals are repeated, and the screams and the yips and the yaps, and it's auto-tuned, and everything is perfected, and everything is many things are computer generated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you heard a mistake in a Stones recording, and there were many, you could the listener could actually see the player,
Mm-hmm.
making the mistake. What can today's listeners envision
Yeah.
when they hear the music? We listened to the music. The people who make the music today, as far as I can tell, look at it. It's on a screen. It's got like a little graph. They can take this section and move it to here. It's all digital. It's all perfect, and it doesn't have soul. It doesn't breathe.
Yeah, there's no character.
I have a 4-hour playlist that I take with me to the gym. It's very inspiring. Some songs I've been listening to for 40 years, they still work for me. I did sample a modern playlist that a young friend of mine made, actually the son of a friend of mine. And it was quite good initially, but after a few weeks, it failed to make me run faster and lift more weight.
It got old fast.
It did. It did. Yeah. It just stopped inspiring me, and inspiration is what makes great music.
Yeah. Yeah. I work at a retro store part-time, and we sell, band t-shirts and, from the 80s and 70s and all that kind of stuff. And parents come in with their kids that are like 10 years old, 12 years old, and the kids are picking out these Guns N' Roses shirts, the Motley Crue shirts.
Right.
And the parents tell me the story, how the kids got into it and how much they're into it. And I always tell them, you're raising them right.
Yeah. It's true. They are. I have to assume that people prefer it to what they're being offered today. I know there's good music out there. I haven't looked for it. But what happened to the guitar? There ain't much left of that. And I think things started to probably change at the end of the last century. For me, they started to change in 1989. Nirvana, Beastie Boys, when they not only didn't think that perfection was important, they avoided it, because perfection was corporate.
What did you think of Nirvana when you first heard them?
I thought they were great.
Yeah. Okay.
But they were great. And then later on, many of the bands that they paved the way for, I didn't think were that great. I did not relate emotionally to Pearl Jam, for instance, and everyone loves them. I didn't think Eddie Vedder's melodies were, I thought they were kind of all the same. There was all this angst and all this, it just didn't do it for me. And obviously I was out because no, self-righteous Seattle band would be caught dead in the studio with a guy who produced Motley Crue or Twisted Sister. That would have destroyed their street credibility, I think. And so I saw the writing on the wall, and by the end of the decade of the 90s, I was out. I thought that anyone who was 55 probably shouldn't be making records for teenagers.
That's interesting though, because I mean, if you can put together a good song, what's the matter?
Well, yeah, but I didn't like, I was offered projects that were good, but not really as meaty as I had been doing in the last 2 decades before that. I didn't think that I was capable of doing a really good production job with the new bands, the grunge bands, the punk bands, as soon as Nevermind came out, really that was it. And in the book, I mentioned that I stopped at my 15-year-old daughter's doorway to her bedroom when she was listening to "You Got to Fight for Your Rights," by the Beasties, and I said, "How can you listen to that? It sounds like it was made in 15 minutes." And she said, "Yeah,
probably was."
Oh no, everything I know is wrong. So
yeah. Was writing the book challenging task for you? Like, was it hard to remember things, or were there some things you wanted to put in there, but didn't want to hurt someone's feelings? Did you go through that whole emotion?
I tried to take the high road.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't leave too much out, in terms of value for the reader, but I enjoyed, I can write. I've written all my life, a lot of letters and a few columns and for this blog. I enjoyed it a lot, and I did not do the professional thing. The pros seem to say, well, I get up at 6, I have 2 strong cups of coffee, and then I pound out 10 pages, regardless of whether I feel like it or not. I didn't do that. If I felt like doing it, I did, and then maybe I would lay off for a month. It took me 3 years to get it into book form. But I enjoy writing, and I kind of like the fact that there's an element of surprise in the feedback I've been getting, as if people are saying, "Wow, a hard rock record producer can write a sentence." It was like, I think they're a little surprised and delighted.
Yeah. Well, I love the book. I think it's very informative. With kind of behind the scenes type stuff in the music industry, you're coming up. And then I'm just getting into the bands now. That's kind of where I'm at in the book.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a great read.
Good. Thanks. People say it's an easy read, and they start it.
It is.
And they finish it very quickly.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that holds me back is the kids. It's hard to read sometimes around this house.
Oh, the kids.
The kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of remember.
Yeah.
My firstborn is now 51. So
I could be your son. That's how old I am.
Right. It happens.
Yeah. Well, let's talk producing a little bit, because you are a music producer. So let me ask you this. Do you have to like the band to be a good producer?
It really helps. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just taking something that you don't like and trying to make it likable. You have to be a fan. It really helps if you're a fan of the band or the artist, because you can, you try to join the band for the time you're in the studio. Sometimes I even did, performed a little bit, and maybe I would sing in a backing chorus. I did all the percussion on all my albums. You want to have fun. A producer is supposed to, forget about his own likes and dislikes and simply help the band to realize its musical vision. But really, when you're in there every day, all day, listening to songs, that you really need to like them in order to help improve them. If you start with a band that doesn't, move you, then really what you're doing is taking something bad, as far as you're concerned, taking something bad and making it reasonable or likable. But if you start, in the positive side, if you start and you're passionate about the demo that you get, you can see, it just stimulates the ideas, and you can rearrange, and you can add a keyboard, and you can, you do what a producer is supposed to do. Otherwise, it's no fun.
Yeah. Have you ever been had to produce a band that you realized that you did not enjoy it?
Well, I Cheap Trick was the best in terms.
Okay.
I enjoyed a lot of my a lot of albums that I did, a lot of bands that I worked with, but they were the easiest by far and the most enjoyable. Twisted Sister was difficult, challenging.
The whole band, or one, or just D?
Mainly, well, it was it was tough. JJ French is a great guy, but it took me 3 days to get a rhythm guitar sound on him, and that was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you would normally take an hour
just to dial in the sound.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, 3 days. Okay.
We had a parade of amps, a parade of guitars, a parade of microphones, and it took, it was on the third day that we finally got a decent rhythm guitar sound for him. That it was tough, and then of course, there was the aftermath with Snyder.
Yeah, that's been widely publicized. Everyone can check that out.
Really, it was mind blowing to me. I said, where did this come from? How did this happen? Because he was, he was fine right up to the minute we walked out of the studio, and then it was, I don't know. It's too late. It's too late now, and I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Let him. He has to grumble, so let him grumble.
Well, that was one heck of a record. I'll say that. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when they re-recorded "Still Hungry," it wasn't there for me. Did you hear it?
I never heard it.
No, you should listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just check it out.
Yeah. Well,
Why not, right?
A lot of the bands I work with would probably have preferred to come off harder, louder, rougher. But I'm a pop guy. And that's that's one of the reasons I was able to get hit singles, make hit singles, and get them on the radio, on AM radio, because it was all AM and FM. And FM was all album play, AM was all hit singles. And if you could have a hit single, you could sell 2 or 3 million albums behind that single. And I was a staff producer, for the last 7 of 12 years for Epic Records. And that was my job. Let's get radio play. If you make a record, it doesn't matter, if it's great, if no one hears it. So you have to make records for the market. And that's what I tried to do.
When you say staff producer, you're just with Epic Records, is that correct?
Yeah, I was a talent scout, but then I moved into the studio So I wound up producing 13 records, I think, for Ted Nugent, Cheap Trick, and Molly Hatchet. And they were all big hits. And so I left eventually. I left CBS because they weren't paying me very much. My job description was, I was there. They owned me. I got a salary, and they gave me a little pittance for a bonus for selling 8 million Ted Nugent records. I got a nickel a record. It was nice back then, and yeah, all of a sudden.
Was a nickel a good amount back then, or no?
Well, normal regular independent producers got 35 to 40 cents.
Oh, that's a big difference.
Big difference. Yeah. So that's what I started to make when I left Elektra Records, which was in 1982, and I started producing, independently. I made a living after
Sure.
that.
Yeah, you put out some good records, some great records. Still stand the test of time. Now, before you were producing, you kind of got thrown into the producing role, right? With Ted Nugent.
Yeah, I horned in.
Yeah.
I didn't have faith in his producer, who was a very nice man, but didn't have a rock and roll head. And I knew what Ted wanted, and I got along very well. We never discussed politics. I want to make that very clear.
Was he like that back then too?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
I don't know where he went off in that direction. And I don't know why, but he knows that I'm a registered Democrat. But we maintained contact. We did very well together. We got along really well. He's very nice to me in the press. He always thanks me for safeguarding his music, and he taught me a lot about seeing things from another perspective, being a little more understanding of the other side, but yeah, we never talked politics.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I signed these bands, and I produced them, which was great because I loved them. I wasn't assigned a band. We want you to do this. We don't know what to do with this band. Other labels, when I went independent, would come to me with that kind of project. I would imagine they were talking amongst themselves and saying, "What the hell are we going to do with this band?" And they would say, "Oh, give it to Werman.
He'll make it gold."
Yeah, he can make a silk purse out of a sousy, or
Why would a label sign a band and not know what to do with it? Why would they go into that like that?
It happens that maybe they don't know how inept the band is as musicians. Maybe it's the wrong band for their promotion staff. I don't know, but when Doug Morris was the president of Atlantic Records, and he called me at home and he said, "Listen, I have a band that it can, that makes noise in Europe, but they can't get arrested in the United States. And I think you're the only guy who can make a hit record with them." So, when the president of a label says something like that, you say, okay, because it's going to get the full court press. And so that's,
Did it work?
It worked. It was Twisted Sister.
Oh, okay.
And so you try to you just try to do your best, and that was it.
And I think for the most part, you had the musicians in the band play their parts, right? You didn't bring in outsiders.
No, I really did not like to bring in ringers. I used 2 session guitarists once for one song each. And that was Steve Lukather from Toto. Brilliant. And he was on just a ballad, a Cheap Trick ballad. And then Jay Graydon was on the studio version of I Want You to Want Me, because it was a dance hall song when I did it. And it was jazzy, and it had finger snaps and tack piano, and that's the way it was on the demo. And then they completely changed it. But I would bring in somebody, a specialist, a cellist. I used a cellist on one Cheap Trick song, and I used Mickey Raphael, who was Willie Nelson's harmonica player, on a couple of Poison tunes. Bret played harmonica. He played it pretty well, but I think he went out. I think they were gone by the time, they would rush out to. Bands always had another tour. It was really tough for them. They'd have a big hit record, and all of a sudden they'd be under pressure to write 12 more great songs.
I hear that story a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and finish the record before, the next tour. And the next tour was the big, that was the way that everyone made money. The band, the manager, the label, the agency, everything.
Yeah.
So there was.
Now you did Stryper's Against the Law record, which I actually like that record. And it's funny. I saw them on the To Hell with the Devil tour, and then I saw them on that tour, Against the Law tour. And I got to tell you, totally different band. Just like Robert had his head down on the snare drum between songs. They were just like Motley Crue, it was like night and day. But yeah, that was
I don't think I did see them live ever. But they were great to work with. Really, really nice people, cooperative. I was pretty surprised, that they would call me. I'm not exactly a man of God, but they said, we don't want to make a religious record. We want to make a secular record. And I said, yeah, okay.
Now on that record, you did bring in a bass player for Shining Star, though, right?
I don't remember.
Tim didn't play on that.
You know this better than I do. I
think Randy Jackson played it.
Oh, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was an A&R at Columbia for a while too. Wow.
I think that's how the story. Tim told me that himself.
Really? Why did he do that? Probably for that, that feel, from the original record.
Right.
Who was it?
I'm pretty sure he said it was Randy Jackson.
No, but I'm forgetting who did Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Tim lacked the funk element.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's interesting. Those are the kinds of things that I did not remember. There's a lot that I did not remember. Fortunately, I remember enough so that I could fill the book with interesting stories and observations. But yeah, that's something I haven't considered or thought of in 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to imagine a lot of the band musicians from back then and producers like yourself are writing books now. So I got to imagine a lot of that stuff is hard to remember for a lot of them.
It is, and I'm sure I've forgotten much more than I've remembered. I have these snapshots, recollections, and stories, the highs and the lows, and it was just such a memorable life that I was lucky enough to lead. The change of direction, when I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I fled to rock and roll from this horrendous corporate life that was designed for me, and that turned me off completely. I was miserable.
Yeah.
And I
Sounds
went,
like a miserable job in your book
yeah,
when you're talking
well,
about it.
for some people they love it, but for me it was, I went from hell to heaven overnight, literally overnight. When Clive hired me, I walked out of his office on air.
That changed your life, that letter. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you didn't send that letter?
No, I I had to get into the music business at that point. I had seen so much great music that I said there must be a place for me in this legitimate business, and that's why I went for CBS Records, because they were the top of the heap and the most sophisticated, the most businesslike.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they would value the MBA and value the fact that I had a job at it was a good job, but that I was very unhappy, and that I was a musician, and I had, so, I gave Clive the soft sell, and fortunately they needed people.
Yeah. Yeah. Good timing.
Yeah, really,
Now,
really.
when you were doing A&R, your first band was REO Speedwagon, right?
Yeah, about
Okay.
2 months after I started.
What,
Um,
how'd they get on your radar?
well, Paul Lecca, who was an independent engineer, he had done their a record at his house in Connecticut, at some home studio. He brought in the acetate, played it, and I heard Sophisticated Lady and 157 Riverside Avenue and Gypsy Woman's Passion. And I said, wow, these are good. This is a good band. I need to go see them. And I went to see them, and they were fantastic. That was the first time I ever flew away to see a band. Having heard the music. Normally, I would get a demo,
Mm-hmm.
not a finished record, and it was great to get a finished record. We simply purchased it, and there it was. And they're still on the road. Well, the band, I don't know, there are two, I think there are possibly two originals left. Kevin is out there, and I don't know if Neil is still there, but 50 years.
That's
50 years.
incredible. Great
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Do you
Always.
ever sit back and just think about how you affected all those people's lives by making their hit records?
Not, yes, some more of the time I think about the ones that didn't make it,
Mm,
and I feel really badly because I failed to deliver the kind of record that would have made them rich and famous. These, they devote their lives to this music, and I'm involved for a period of time, and I think the stuff is great, and it doesn't happen, to the extent that I think it should. The Producers and Mother's Finest, two bands from Atlanta that I did in the 80s, killer bands. I mean, if you had asked me before I made a record on a band that I signed, what were the best bets? Those two would have been the best bets. I mean, I
really?
thought they were both absolute home runs, and
Hmm.
I feel bad because they, incredible talent and wonderful material, incredible playing. Just superb in every way. And for some reason, the stars didn't line up.
But that's
Uh,
not all on you, though. I mean, there's
Not
a
all,
lot goes on after that album's made that can make or
absolutely.
break it.
And I do blame the label for some of that, the Portrait label, which was a new label at CBS.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I feel badly about them. I feel really good about the big hits and about the wonderful lives that these musicians had, partly because of the work that I did. But then again, many of them, have changed their tune over the last 30 years. And I always like to say they love you, and when they're selling millions of records, 20 years later, you sucked. You
Yeah.
just didn't pay attention. You didn't get their sound. You weren't, you were on the phone a lot. It's major historical revision. So the ones that should be grateful, most of the time aren't that grateful.
Have you ever ran into any of the ones that say you didn't do a good job, like after they've said that? And
I don't want to.
okay,
I don't really want to see D. Snyder, or even Nikki and I had words, because he said stuff in the Heroin Diaries that was just absurd. And I wrote a letter to the New York Times book review, which actually reviewed his book. It was unbelievable. And I said, look, I'm sorry. This is fiction. I was there. This is not happening. And he was pissed. So we had a thing in the in online.
the online world.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Motley. I know you've talked about them a lot, but I mean, how were they working in the studio with you?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, their outrageous behavior that everybody seems to know about was outside of the studio, really. I never saw any member of that band under the influence of anything. I saw them take drugs and drink, and we all did.
Mm-hmm.
But it never seemed to affect their performance.
They were pretty professional in a studio.
They were fairly professional, and Vince liked to. He put in his hours. He worked really hard, but he would stay out till 4 a.m. When he knew he had to sing the next day.
Mm. Was it hard to get a good take from him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. Vince was not the kind of guy who would say, girls, it's midnight and I've got to sing tomorrow, so I'm going to go to bed. He didn't do that. It was great. He had a wonderful attitude toward life in general, but that was tough. However, he never came in drunk or under the influence. They were fairly focused, really, and I was grateful for that. I mean, Nikki had to do all the bass parts to Shout at the Devil with his arm in a sling because he ran his car into a utility pole.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
And they kept you around for 3 records. That's a long time, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did 5 with Ted. I did 3 with Cheap Trick. But when they complain, the producer is simply a hired hand. They hire you with the advance they get from the record company, and they can fire you.
And they don't have to rehire you.
No. So I do find it curious that they complain when they kept me around for 3 records. Jimmy Iovine once said, after 3 records, you should shoot your producer. And I think 3 is plenty. I don't see any reason why there's anything wrong with a band changing producers after 3 records.
Mm-hmm.
I have a routine. there are things that I liked to do that I learned that worked in the studio, and I would, you know,
Can that be dangerous,
yeah, well,
having a routine?
yeah, because then you don't help the band come across. You do your own thing, and it's like a bad Phil Spector, maybe. He had an absolutely recognizable sound. You said, "Oh, that's a Phil Spector record." I hear the wall of sound. In his case, it was great. In other cases, like mine, it could have been bad. I stopped working with Ted after 5 records because I felt that neither of us was into anything new at that point. In terms of making Ted Nugent records. I mean, his songs were fairly the same. There wasn't any big musical growth like the Beatles had from album to album. And my working with him, I couldn't figure out any new way to make him evolve.
Sure.
So I stopped. I did 5 with Molly Hatchet, and I think that was it for me.
Now Motley changed with the times, though, with their image and their sound. I think, like from Shout to Theater of Pain, and then to Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yeah, Girls was slicker.
I didn't like that record.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like that one.
No, I love Girls, 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 the cut, and especially Wild Side.
Wild Side was good. Yeah, I did like that.
Yeah, killer. But
and you probably think I'm weird, but I think Theater of Pain was probably my favorite.
That is weird.
A lot of people don't like it. I seem to like the records nobody likes.
Yeah.
Like Rat, I like Dancing Undercover. Nobody liked that record. AC/DC, I liked Flick of the Switch. Nobody liked that record.
No, you don't like Back in Black?
I like Flick of the Switch better.
Yeah, wow.
I'm weird. I don't know.
Yeah. But, no, that's good. That's discerning listening.
Yeah.
Not going with the crowd.
Poison, you did.
Yeah.
Now, this was a little different, I think, because they already had a successful record when you got them, right? Whereas a lot of the other artists you got fresh.
Right.
So was that different, producing a band that already had a little bit of a momentum going?
Well, yeah, Motley did too, in a smaller way.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And all the others that I did in the 80s really had a bit of a base. The Poison record was a big surprise for their label. They kind of came out of nowhere, and the fans really came through. The label didn't know that they had that many fans. They were a winning combination, and I did that record. It wasn't easy. But they were good. They were hard workers. Cece was a little distracted, but after it was all over, we had 3 top 10 singles and 1 number 12, which was astonishing. I've never had anything like that. It was a huge album, and
your only number 1, right?
A single, yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to. Girls, Girls, Girls album was number 2. Right behind Whitney Houston. But no, that was the only number 1, Every Rose, and it was that was fun to produce.
Now you said in your book too about you something about you couldn't recognize a hit. Right? It was hard for you to recognize a hit. Every Rose, did you know that was going to be a hit? Did you recognize that one?
Immediately.
Yeah.
But when it came to, for the first 5 years, really at Epic in New York, I would just simply have cartons and cartons of reel-to-reel tapes and cassettes of bands that wanted to get signed. And I would listen to a song and just not really be able to evaluate it until I had heard it 2 or 3 times. And then it would become more obviously good or obviously bad. It's kind of like a movie. You can see a movie and somebody will say, "What do you think?" And it's your opinion, but only your opinion. I don't like I don't listen to critics or or read critics. I wish I could, because they make your life easier and they help you to avoid crap. But I was always, I was in the beginning, I was always unsure.
Yeah.
So I had to listen again and again and again. When he played Every Rose in rehearsal, he just strummed my guitar and he sang it. And I said, "Oh boy, this we have a single." And I thought it was a really nice country song. I think Miley Cyrus covered it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, somebody rather countryish. But yes, that I recognized right away. And Girls, Girls, Girls. That I recognized right away.
Who was easier to work with, Vince or Bret, singing wise?
Oh, Bret.
Yeah.
Not because Vince was uncooperative, but I think Bret was, more capable in terms of pitch, and delivery, and it helps when you write the song.
Yeah.
To know
Yeah,
how to
because Vince
sing.
didn't write those, right? He did. Nikki wrote the lyrics and everything.
Yeah, he and Tommy pretty much everything. Yeah.
Okay. How about Cece? Was he difficult guitar playing wise? Because I mean, he was never known as the best guitar player back then. He
No,
was always known a little bit of sloppiness and.
a little bit. He was reckless.
Mhm.
A little bit reckless in his velocity and his shredding, but he was distracted and handicapped by his recreational drug use at that time. So we would spend 30 or 40 minutes on a solo, and then he'd go to the bathroom and he'd come back and he'd say, "I don't like it at all. Let's start again." And that went on for many days. But the end result, he sounds pretty good, I think.
Did he write his leads or did he go in and just kind of throw down and see what happens?
Oh, I think he planned them. He didn't plan them like Mick Mars planned his.
Oh, he had them
Mick
dialed in.
was astonishing.
Uh-huh.
He would come in absolutely prepared. We just zipped through his guitar work. CC took more time. He was a little more free form.
Okay. Okay. Talk about another band you produced, Kicks.
Yeah.
Because I thought Kicks, especially that Blow My Fuse record, was a great record. And they didn't really get to the level I thought they should have been at.
Right. They were heavily AC/DC influenced.
Mm-hmm.
Very heavy.
What do you think was holding them back from getting to that next level?
I really don't know. They were very good live.
Yeah.
Very, and I thought they were very good, in the studio too. And Steve was a great singer, and Brian was a great guitarist. I don't know. You like Donnie Purnell's bass playing?
I thought the whole record was. I thought they were a great band. Yeah.
They were.
And I think they went out recently. I think they went out the correct way with their retirement.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, nobody seems to want to retire anymore.
Well, they said this is it, and I think I believe them.
Yeah,
Unlike a lot of others.
we believed Motley Crue too when they called the press conference and signed a contract.
But did we though? You know, it's kind of like Kiss. Is this really going to be the last show?
Yeah, I know Doc is still going out with Kiss. Amazing.
Yeah.
Doc McGhee. I talk to him occasionally, and he's, oh, I just got back from Brazil with Kiss. I just got back from Argentina with, it's
Still
amazing.
out there. That's got to be hard now.
Yeah.
Traveling all. I don't mean that in a bad way, but things get harder.
Yeah, that's why I'm fully retired and blissed out here in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think you'd ever do something again? Like if someone said, "Hey, Tom, you want to check this out?" You don't think
If Dave Grohl did, I would do it. That's it.
You would do it. A Foo Fighters.
That's the only one.
That would be awesome.
And he doesn't need a producer either.
Well, maybe you can just go in there and help a little bit and be producing the Foo Fighters.
I would just like to sit in the control room,
Yeah.
with him. He is the embodiment of rock and roll. I just think he's great.
Yeah. Now, the last thing you did was the Rockstar soundtrack. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which was a great soundtrack. Now, did you put the band together? I mean, what was your involvement there? I mean, what happened?
Well, I didn't put the tribute band together. The band called Blood Pollution.
Right, right.
But I did get Jeff Pilson from Dokken, for the big band, and I did not get Zakk Wylde and Jason Bonham. I don't know how they came to be, but Pilson was the control factor, in that big in that band. What was their name?
Steel Dragon.
But Steel Dragon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. This is
Perfect
what happens.
metal name.
What happens when you get to be 79? Yeah, I enjoyed that. Although the producer's role in a film is very subservient to everybody else. You just sit in the studio and wait. And they'll call you and say, we need this, we need that, and you have to chop things up and re-record, and they'll send a song into the studio, and you have to record it and mix it in 24 hours. Yeah, it's really tough. I used to think that being a good record producer was difficult, but when I saw what a movie director does, I was just astonished. I mean, he's got hundreds of people that he has to delegate to and coordinate, and
why was Jeff the guy for the bass player? Why'd you pick him?
He was a good bass player,
mm-hmm.
and he was responsible, straight, diligent, good-natured, and cooperative.
So you knew you could count on him.
A very together person.
Mm-hmm.
And he played that role in Dokken too. I knew I would have to have someone to keep the peace between Jason and Zach, and I was right.
They didn't
Jason
get along.
And Zach, they were like, what is it, water and oil?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Zach doesn't seem like the guy I'd want to get on his bad side.
No, you definitely don't. You definitely don't. And Jason once said to me, I don't know, he had done something outrageous, and he said, look, after all, I have a reputation to uphold. It was John Bonham's son. He's got to be nuts. He's got to be extreme. And he was, and Zach was, but I like I'm not wild about the songs necessarily, but I think the performances were really good.
Did you choose Steelheart singer? What's his name? Mike
Matievich.
Yeah. Did you choose him?
Yes, I did, and
Jeff Jeff Scott Soto.
Scott Soto, yeah. Yeah, Jeff, look at this. Memory is woo. Yeah, because both of them had ultra high voices. And I needed that. So we had a very good time. The hardest thing was for me to do a really good job with Steel Dragon, and then purposefully or purposely make Blood Pollution sound okay, but not quite as good.
How did you approach that?
Well, you wouldn't drive them as hard. You wouldn't be as careful. You would allow a few mistakes. You would, it just was your standard. My standards of acceptance were lower when we did the same song with Blood Pollution. So, it's really a shame about the movie because I think it was one week before 9/11.
How was it? I didn't realize that.
Came out. Yeah, it was either 1 week. It wouldn't have been after. It came out a week before 9/11, and that was it. And I mean, nobody ever heard of it. It did well, I was told, in video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the movie.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah. And then recently, a few years ago, you decided to sell your catalog, correct?
Yes. My royalties. Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you want to do that?
Well, it's strictly economic. I could have gone on and gotten annual income from more streaming every year, and that would have been fine. I lived well, and still do, but they offered me a lump sum that was equal to 15 years of my average annual royalty at that time. The formula was the last 3 years average of your royalty income times a certain multiple. And the way mine worked was, I did some quick calculating, and I said, well, at this rate, I would, it would take 15 years for me to make what they're offering me. So you take what they're offering you or what they give you, and hopefully you can live off it by investing it and having it make a modest amount, 4% a year. It's fine. It's fine.
So I'm trying to see how it benefits them so much. So they got to go 15 years to get just their money back. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Research. These companies are not dumb,
right.
and they do a lot of research. In the beginning, which was 3 or 4 years ago, I said to myself and to my wife, I said, I don't see how they'll ever make this money back.
Right.
And now I'm beginning to see, because they projected streaming revenue. It's just it's phenomenal, because anybody with access to the internet anywhere on Earth can listen to anything at any time, and they do, and the billions of streams really add up. So it gets a little bigger every year, and I'm just stunned at how many of the albums I did keep selling and selling and selling.
And I think they always will.
And they actually increased. My royalty income was declining until about 2010, and then it bottomed out and started up again. And I think it would. I don't see any statements anymore. I'm not allowed to.
Right.
all the statements go to the company that bought my royalties. But
Yeah.
they're not stupid. They
Sure.
didn't say, "Oh, what did we do?" They
Yeah,
know
I think Nikki sold his rights too, right? To Crue
some,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the money that there was a real rush to do this a few years ago. I don't think it's happening now. I'm not
You
sure
mean
why.
people selling their rights?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there were hundreds of millions,
Hmm.
hundreds of millions. And Springsteen got $500 million or something.
Hmm.
And Stevie Nicks got 100 million, and Dylan got 300 million. And it was nuts. I
Yeah.
did not get that much. I'll make that clear. You know, so I mean, it was something. It was a gift. It was
Yeah.
something that I had never imagined. And I got a call from a lawyer who said, "I can get you this." And I said, "Sold." Great. And then I sold the farm, and we moved up the street and renovated, and I'm just delighted with my life at
You're
this point.
happy.
Yeah,
Good.
very, very.
Good.
And
Good.
I'm thrilled about the book. It's, I never imagined that I could get a book published. It's
I
nice.
know. And it's a real book too. Look,
Yeah,
real pages.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Tom, your book, Turn It Up, great read, is available. Is the best place to get it Amazon?
Probably if there's not a bookstore near you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Amazon or Barnes and Noble, anything online,
Mhm.
it's high on the Amazon category chart that says music and sound recording.
Nice. So you
I'm,
got records charted and now a book that's starting.
yeah, yeah.
Do you still have any of your platinum albums or gold records?
Some people ask where they are. They're in a closet.
In the
Um,
closet, you don't hang them up. You don't,
yeah.
you're just done.
Yeah, well, it's not that I don't want, I just think it's tacky.
Hmm.
Come into my house, see what I did, yeah,
Yeah, it's
no,
something to be proud of though.
it is, but the book can stand in their place.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I it would be overwhelming. It really would. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you put 23 gold and platinum records in one room?
That would be,
Come on. I mean, really.
you'd go blind from the light bouncing off them.
Exactly.
All right, Tom. Well, man, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you. It was very, very interesting and fun.
Awesome, buddy. All right.
Okay.